got a great special presentation tonight. Special in a lot of ways. You don't have to look very far to figure out how special it is. And we have some people that were part of history, recreated history, saving history. And isn't that what the candy store is about? It's taking care of history and putting it on display and learning from it and preserving it. And so that brings me to the sponsor for this evening, which is the Candy Store Foundation. This is sort of the first thing we've put on, and towards that end, we are taping the heck out of this, and it will be something available to everybody. And there's some other things like with Bob Cole that have been videotaped, and we'll make those, building a library as part of the way to respect the heritage of the candy store, all the many great things that the people of the candy store have done, because it's a phenomenal story. And this guy raced cars at Pebble Beach and knows the stories firsthand, and we're going to hear about that. But again, you know, just a reminder, the foundation here has a mission of preserving and displaying and educating about great cars. We're at the beginning of our mission. We have a lot to do, and we hope this is a great way to kick it off. And thank you for all coming and supporting this event. And Bob Devlin, our presenter, has a lot to tell you about the cast of characters we have here, the importance of this car. He's going to talk to you about the history, and then we're going to go take a look. And are we using screwdrivers or? Okay, and we'll get deep inside the car. Okay. So let me just turn it over to our very own Bob Devlin.
Welcome, everybody. This is the second time we've done one with the Ferraris that raced at Pebble Beach. We had the 250mm that Phil Hill won in '53 here, or 260M. And this is the car that Phil Hill won in 1955 in Pebble Beach in the rain. And then the following year, Carroll Shelby won the same car to victory. So we have two cars at Pebble Beach. Allard 1850, which was the Carson's Allard, and by Bill Pollock, won in 51 and 52, the same car. And this car here won in 55 and 56. So, what we have here is a photo of the racetrack at Pebble Beach. And we have here is a 6-turn race course. Halfway down, I don't have a pointer here of this sort. We have the pit area and the start finish line. Okay? Coming down to a dog leg, the first turn, second turn, turn 2A and B, a serpentine backstretch. The only left-hand turn is turn 3 up to a hairpin. Now the first year, they had a cutoff that went right through here between 3 and 5, which is endurance. Those of you that attended 2015 event, we ran 7 Ferraris around the circuit, the actual race there. It came through. Now down to turn 6, a dog leg here, turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The important thing is up here, turn 5. There are 4 different roads that come together. You see them all? Come in. And you'll see a picture of Phil Hale airborne in 55 in practice on that circuit. And he's right there. That's where Bob Ralston took the photo. Bob Ralston took the photo there. It's a great scene. And Pat Otis and I were talking about this. He said, "Got to remember that was in practice because there's no rain falling in that shot." But so that's the circuit we ran on from 51 through 56 at Pebble Beach. Here's where the concourse is. Here's Delmine Lodge. Basically Carmel Bay out here. And this is it right from the program in 56. Right? Get a feeling from that north, south, east, west. Up on the compass. This goes over to Carmel. The other roads go back over to Monterey over the top. Okay, past the road of Louis Stevenson's goal. Now, there were 14 Ferraris that raced at Pebble Beach between 51 and 56. They're listed here. In 51 with Jim Kimberly owning 010M, which you'll see another photo of later, which I did when George Jewett owned the car. Race number 20, Del Monte handicap, 6th place. Did not finish because he lost the turn going into turn 3 and flipped the car over on top of himself. That was the weekend that Ginger Rogers was his date. And she came up and planted a kiss on his cheek. We hear. Anyway, that's the result. Next year was Arnold Stubbs driving Phil Hill's 212 ED 007AE, the Monte Trophy, 2nd place. What happened is that Phil Hill, on a handshake, agreed in 52 to drive a car, the LT3, which is a Jaguar, lightweight Jaguar. They weren't quite sure the Jaguar works, that the C-Type would be ready by then or not. So they built these 3 cars to race, which didn't. They all sold over here. Charles Hornberg owned the car on a handshake. Phil Hill agreed to do it. Can you imagine? On a handshake, the variety this guy had, a quality man. He agreed to do it. He turns his first Ferrari over to Arnold Stubbs, who co-drove with him in the Carrara the year before. Okay, the next year we found the car we featured a year ago here, 53, in 250mm. This is the first time a Ferrari won in Pebble Beach. 060M, Phil Hill owner, race number 2, Del Monte Trophy first. Del Monte Trophy was the over 1,500 seat feature race each year after the first year, where they called it something else, the Pebble Beach Cup. Okay, coming down, following that is the 340 Mexico, 00228AT. Bill Spear, who owned the car, number 10, Del Monte Trophy, finished 2nd behind Phil. Now that's a 4.1 liter Lampredi engine car against Phil Hill's Colombo 3-liter car. Very interesting car. The next car is a car that's near and dear to somebody here in 54, a 166mm 058E, Dr. R.N. Craycroft. Race number 16, he got a 2nd place in Cypress Point Handicap, which is a novice race. The handicap was. Now, why it's interesting is that Ed and Sherry Gilbertson owned that car, that Barchetta, for years here, and Ed was the one behind putting together the Barchetta reunion in 1989 in the old circuit. Right? And we thank them for what they've done then, and continue to thank them for what they're doing in the world of automobiles today. The next car was a 340mm owned by Sterling Edwards. It was a honeymoon car in Italy with his new wife, Marion. Race number 26, Del Monte Trophy, 1st place. Now, he was the founder of the road races at Pebble Beach, so he finally won the race in 54. However, his R26 you see a picture of was the first winner of the Pebble Beach Concours. It was sort of a political thing, because he arranged everything there, met with the powers that be, the like. So that's the car. And then 166mm Series 2, 0342M, Randy McDougall's Barchetta Series 2 car. This is a car with quad carburetors. They already had a quad carburetor Ferrari. They tend to flood out, and they also flood out in starting, which I had trouble getting the car started 2015 going, but I didn't want to flood it. But also, it had great big floats in the carburetor, so on decreasing radius turns, it would starve out the gasoline. You come in and go, and get back on it again, okay? That car is an interesting car, and we'll go through that in a few minutes. 1955, we have a feature car here tonight, 0510M, Phil Hill, owned by Alan Giverson. Now, Phil Hill, through 53, raced his own cars, or race cars for, such as the LT1 for somebody else, LT3 for someone else. But basically, here's the car that he was able to do. Alan Giverson owned the car, and he won the Del Monte Trophy. That was in the rain, okay? Great driver. He really got his wings here racing in California, up and down the state. The next one is a 735 Monza MD 428. That's just the Sterling Edwards car then. He bought it from Alfonso de Portago, He ran in the Carrara. He went out on the first day. He did not finish up the race.
Car was raced, and Kate finished second. Phil Wells was in 20 seconds of lapping the second place car. That's how fast Phil was in the race. So the car was not painted, it was a primer. At the awards banquet that night, they presented the trophy. They gave him a can of paint to paint his car. This is the jokes they had. They had a lot of fun putting on these events. And you'll see pictures of that later. Next year, 56, Carol Shelby in the same car. Richard Hall, Jim Hall's brother, bought the car for Jim, 0510M, and it also finished first in the Del Monte Trophy. 860 Monza, 0604, Phil Hill, owned by John Von Neumann. He bought the car that Castellotti and Fangio won Sebring that year, and with the 860 Monza. And the car was not suited for a tight circuit. It was more for endurance racing, not a sprint race, 100-mile sprint race, which was a subject. Next car was an 857 Monza, 0588M, Jack McAfee, owned by John Egger, number 98, Del Monte Trophy third. So first, second, third place. Edwards in his car, now painted 0428MD, at number 26, finished fifth. The 750 Monza, Dabney Collins, Temple Beal owned it, number 87. If you've ever seen On the Beach, the movie with Fred Astaire driving the car, that's the one Monza without a headrest. There's no headrest in it. And evidently, the car had been built at one point, and Scaglietti was the designer, as he did a lot of great cars. And Dino Ferrari came by and saw it, and needs a headrest. So Dino doesn't design the headrest, it was his idea to put a headrest on it. Okay, so we've checked that out from many people. I think that's the truth. So I'm trying not to pass on that. 750 Monzetta, 0438MD, John Von Neumann, he owns it, and it finished 10th. That was a 500 Mondial with a 750 motor in it. 500cc car with a 750 motor. It was Von Neumann's first hot rod. He had a number of hot rod Ferraris. And the last one down there, the 121 LM, a 6-cylinder car, which is a Monza with 2 extra cylinders on it. Ernie McAfee, owned by William Doheny, 276 Del Monte Trophy DNF. He died in that, driving that car and that race. Lost control of it coming downhill and went into a pine tree and was killed. Bill Doheny was the owner of 76 stations. That's why you always see a 76 on the car, 176, 276, that's the reason for it. Now let's look at this for a minute. Take a look at the last digit going down here. Last digit going down, all even numbers. All race cars for Ferrari were numbered, even numbers. All road cars, the last digit was an odd number. I own 0158AD, which is a Barchetta 212, last digit. I always have an even digit that are race cars, and then I own 05199, a Lusso, a black Lusso, for many years also, and that was a road car, 05199. All right, moving along. At the bottom, we had 7 12-cylinder cars, 6 4-cylinder cars, and 1 6-cylinder car Ferrari racing at Pebble Beach. Okay, here's a shot I took of for Cavallino magazine of George Jewish 166 Barchetta, which he had restored here locally. Gorgeous car. This is the ex-Kimberly car from 1951. And we took it out of Spreckles Lake on Saturday because the sailboats go on Spreckles Lake on Saturday and the power boats go on, radio-controlled power boats go on Sunday, so I know it was done on Saturday. That's the car. I did an article for Cavallino on it. That's Jim Kimberly leaning over his car, 0510M. He's got his Navy flight jacket on. He's the Kimberly of Kimberly-Clark, Kleenex, all that. Take a look at his left hand, all the way down the bottom. That is a lit cigarette in his hand, leaning over his car. I don't know whether you approve of that or not, I don't. But he survived it. But he crashed the car the next day. Here he is coming out of turn 6 and 51, powering it out, and that's certainly was the R26 behind him, a car that Emil Deep built for him, aluminum with a Ford V8. He had won Palm Springs about a month before the Pebble Beach race. That's turn 6. Look at the hay bales backed up there between there and the pine trees and the telephone poles everywhere. If you made a mistake and went off the track, you had pine trees to collect you or telephone poles. Pretty bad. Here's Kimberly at full throttle coming through the start finish straight. Look at the people in the background. You see where their hands are all coming across together? That's a rope going between the trees holding back the spectators. I mean, safety didn't exist in those days. This is the 52 Arnold Stubbs in Phil Hill's 212 going through in practice, because ahead of him is the Formula 3 Cooper, ahead of that is the Parkinson Jaguar, ahead of that is a conventional 120, left-hand drive 120 going through in practice. Notice the hay flying up on the ground here, where there's been contact with the hay bales all the way around. As the cars come through, it just throws hay up in the air. Here's at the hairpin turn 4 with Phil Hill in the LT3 pushing Arnold Stubbs in the 212, his own car, but driven by Arnold Stubbs. Arnold Stubbs is wearing the typical helmet, Cromwell leather helmet, like all the sprint car drivers do. He was a sprint car driver. And this is the year where you can see on the 32 with a 4 next to it, instead of A, B, C, D, 1 year only, they put numbers after for the classes. Then they reverted back to putting, you can always tell a photo that has a number on it, SCCA, that's 1952, only. Here's the shot I took of Phil Hill's car for Cavalier magazine, which is published back, what was it, 1991? November, December 1991, issue number 65. This is shot, we had the car, Dave Smith owned the car at this point. I had Phil Hill come up and place the car at the start-finish line exactly where the car was listed. He put it exactly where it was when he had it start. In the background, you can see an equestrian rider across the field. That's the equestrian field there. And this area between the pavement and that fence is the pits. The cars were all lined up at angles in there, all through there. That's the start-finish line. This is a shot in the pits also around that car. On the left, you have Luigi Canetti. Next to him, Phil Hill, Bill Spear, and Troy Ruttman. Notice anything unusual about Troy Ruttman? The year before, he'd won Indy. He's the youngest guy at age 22 to win Indy. And he wasn't a rookie, quite a rookie, because he'd won around before that. But he broke his arm about a month later in a race, and he's still in a sling. So that's Troy Ruttman showing up. And Ruttman drove a lot of, was one of the first Americans to drive a Grand Prix car in a Grand Prix. Everyone thinks Massey Gregory was, but Ruttman was before him. Here's Phil Hill in at the awards banquet. We're receiving a lesser award than the big trophy, a series that look like teacups. Charles Christensen is giving it to him. In the background, the guy with a big smile clapping his hand, that's Alfred Ducato. You know that name? Fred Ducato in the background, yeah. You know that. Anyway, that's Fred Ducato in the background. That's the Dillman Lodge at the trophy dinner. Here's my trophy lady, Betsy, alongside me, and we had the practice laps we had around there. We called them parade laps, and I'm driving the Series 2 Randy Expedited McDougall car, 0342 and it's got the big quad carburetors on it. You can see the owners of the car, Phil and Martha Bachman, also ran the Colorado Grand, number 51, the sticker on the side of the car. So this is the lap tours we had. I had Ed Gelbison join me for one of those 3 laps I took. I'm driving the car through the dirt section now, connecting the original track, and followed by a number of cars that Les Wexler owns. You know what he's known for? Owner of Victoria's Secret. That's how he made his money. Selling women's undergarments and things like that, okay? Bedwear. So that's the cars coming through. The car behind me driving is the X-Spear car, the Mexico. That's the only roadster they made. They made 3 coupes in this version and 1 roadster. He had that. And followed by the car that certainly was raced and won in 1954, the 340MN. Why we show this photo is that Lincoln as you know, was very serious about racing the Carrera and won 2 years in a row, 53, 54 there. These jackets preparing Bill Strope's short wheelbase Curtis 500 are shown getting it ready for the race at Pebble Beach. That's the pit section. There's the fence you saw in the background. Look at the cars that are behind there just for parking and people sitting up on the fence for better. And that's the three porthole side Vignale Ferrari of Sterling Edwards. Now you know the difference between 2 portholes and 3 portholes? It's the longer wheelbase for the 3 portholes. Just like the long wheelbase Spider, California Spider, has 3 vents on the side rather than 2 vents. And the deal, it's a longer, so you see the 3 portholes on a Ferrari, it means it's over 3-liter car and a longer wheelbase. That's the car. Here's Sterling on the starting grid with his car, number 26. If you look closely, you'll see the little Vignale badge, right below the last porthole, number 26. He raced under 26 all the way through there. Immediately next to him is his wife, Marion. This was a honeymoon car. They picked it up at the factory, and they drove it around on their honeymoon in Italy. Remember George Dyer? That's George Dyer standing with a scarf around his neck or the sweater around his neck on the left. He's the one that bought the Bev Spencer GTO, the white GTO, and painted it a very deep blue years later. Took a lot of gas from his friends, saying, hell, you can buy a new one for that. So he paid, what, $13,000 or something. Well, you can buy a brand new one for that. About a year or 2 years later, the car's value started creeping up, and he had the last laugh. He had the last laugh. Here he is in the winner's circle with all Tories giving him the victory sign. Sterling Edwards worked for Lockheed. He was a P-38 engineer at the end, but a test pilot also before that. I did an article for Alabama Quarterly on him. Very, very interesting man. I sponsored his son Hammond to be a member of this club, as you probably recall. He was here a year ago for the event. But that's the winner's circle at Pebble Beach. International flags going across the back. Here's Al Torres leaning over, handing the flag, shaking his hand. That's a photo op shot, but it gives you a good close-up of a white and blue colors. That's what the colors of American racing. Here's Sterling with Harry Moon Fair at the trophy. That was a trophy for winning in '54. Hammond still has that trophy up in Reno where he lives. Here's our feature car tonight. Just freshly unloaded off the trailer behind that pickup truck behind it. That's on this section of the road going back from Pebble Beach towards Carmel. And the car's just been freshly unloaded. My deceased wife used to live about right here. Well, over here behind. If you look around the road, you're going back, disappearing, going back up to the tennis courts, right where those 2 cars are. She lived there. And Al Walker lived about right above where the headrest of his car is, where I used to do grunt work for him on some of his restoration. Here's Bob Cooper giving, in the rain, our feature car, the flag at the finish line. He's just crossing the finish line as he's doing it. And the flag in the air, and there's nobody in sight behind him. Look at the spray coming off the back of that car. You know it's wet out there. But rain or shine, they ran the races there. As dangerous as the course it was very dangerous. Here's Phil in the winner's circle. Clark McCutley behind him, a guy on a microphone, and other people around here. The guy with a blanket around him is Bill Pollock. It had been raining heavily. His car lasted. His Baldwin Special, Simpson Baldwin Special lasted about 20 laps of 48 laps. And he's all wrapped up in a blanket because he's shivering cold, congratulating Phil. You know, the rivalry was very strong those years, but once the race is over, there were good sportsmen. They all came over one another and congratulated them for their endeavors. Here's Ken Miles alongside of Phil Hill receiving a sportsmanship award. It was assigned to both of them that year. Ken Miles on the left, Phil Hill on the right. And you'll see the new movie out on the Cobra and versus Ferrari that's being offered. And I'm going to be attending that with Bruce Owen, who's a longtime impresario at the Pacific Union Club. Here's Phil Hill at technical inspection 56. This is in the car that the A60 Monster that won Sebring that year with Fangio and Castellati. And looking down on him with a crew cut is Rod Corvette, remember Rod, in Aston Martin DB3S. That's in the deal. Phil was always nervous going through this thing. He's up there wondering whether he's going to go behind a tree and throw up or do what. That's the way his nerves were always very fragile before a race. He got himself keyed up pretty much. Here's the aero lineup for the tech inspection. That's number 24. That's this car again in 1956 with Carroll Shelby driving it, owned by Richard and Jim Hall. And that car is set up there, and the white lines delineate the outside of the track. If you go up here, the light coming to the pines, going up here, coming through, that's into turn one. You go right into turn one there. What you see straight ahead is the escape road. Every turn had an escape road in case you lost your brakes. If it was a one Jaguar 120, there's probably 2 laps, and the third lap, no brakes. And there's a big drum brakes and there's air that comes through. Those of you that raced them, I know you have, and I think you have also. You know what it is, you got to feather it. You got to feather it. Come. It's tech inspection by SCCA. This is going through out of the turn 3 uphill to the hairpin turn. That's Ernie McAfee in the 120 1LM leading Jack McAfee in the 5457 Monza, okay, by John Eggert. Overhead, you can barely see these flags, and to every turn, they had no passing flags. Until you exit the turn, you weren't able to pass, and you were given a warning flag if you'd done that. You get your braking done early, you get your passing done. That was to avoid contact going through a turn. Okay? Here's the Ernie McAfee, the speed coming down alongside the hay bales and all. Very strong driver. He'd won at Santa Barbara with the car before, and here's the car crashed against that pine tree. His head was one of the first things that hit, and he was just dead on contact. Here's the 276, that beautiful car. Laps later, here's Bill Cleghorn on the right, reaching over to get the hood to cover up the inside of the car. It was pretty bloody. My wife Betsy was standing just across from the racetrack when this thing happened over here. She remembers it well. Coming down the hill, now you see the no passing flags overhead. That's Phil Hill coming down. It's a long section, but as far as that last car up there is where you get airborne, where all those 4 roads come together. The car gets about a foot off the ground at over 100 miles an hour. This is having come out of a turn going 30 miles an hour, accelerating in. Here's Carroll Shelby in the winner's circle. Bob Cooper now is again, the starter. El Torres before that. That's Jimmy Orr on the left with the glass looking down later, a regional exec here. And the woman back here behind that, that's Carroll Shelby's first wife. Here's here they are in the winner's circle, the garlands around them. Here's the trophy lady. Here's Jimmy Orr. And right above the trophy lady is Jim Hall. He was going to Caltech at the time. And he raced underage like I did for about a year before he got caught. I never got caught. Okay, now we get into the most interesting part, just this car. Here's the trophy lady again, my wife, Betsy. Here is the skeleton, the chassis, on a rolling dolly over the Otis shop. The body's been taken off. We're looking at it from the rear and looking forward. You've got the roll bar about halfway up on the beams. You can see that a lot of the beams had to be redone. Yeah, the chassis were painted gray in those days. Some of them were painted black, whatever paint they had. But this is the car on the dolly. So I immediately got over with my camera and started shooting. This is the seat, the aluminum seat that is at both the driver's side and the passenger side. It's made in 3 sections. 3 sections, center section, side section, with the tubing going all the way around. Down here in the lower left, you'll see the tab for locating on the floor, and one back here as well. What you see here is artistry. 38-gallon gas tank. Look at that devil. Can you see all right? Look at that devil. Isn't that a beautiful thing of beauty? The little rivets on it. We rolled it up. It's 38 gallons, correct? Pat? No. 38 gallons. These guys did a great job of salvaging what they can, preserving as much as they could on the car. What you see next is the motor upside down. It's a 4-cylinder motor. Remember, it's an 8-plug motor. twin ignition car, 8 plugs going into 4 cylinders with 4 valves. 4 valves per cylinder? Yeah. So here's the engine down, and you can see the crank up there, 2 up, 2 down, typical 4-cylinder operation. You see the flywheel at the bottom, the gearing for the motor, starting motor to go into it, the clutch settling, which it goes all the way to the back. It's the transaxle car. These are the bins, the rolling bins for the crane. On the right are the Otis car components. On the left is the PET cars, the 735 Monza 04228. And you can see the serial number written right there and the Otis car on the right. That's how you organize parts. You don't get parts crossed over from one car to the other. The care that the Otis shop takes in restoration work, regardless of what your car is supreme. It's very well done. This is the beginning. I went over to see Jimmy Kilroy in the Mole shop, Mole Coastwork shop in Oakland. And here's the beginning of reconstructing the nose. This car was badly damaged in transport when it was under Hull's ownership, and in a truck, which it involved in a head-on collision. And Pat Otis can talk more about that later when we gather around the car. But here's what it looks like. The back section's been lifted off. This is an alloy car with the back section sitting on the floor. It was unaffected by it. Here's the fascia or instrument panel of the car. TAC would be center. There is supporting instruments for the motor, oil pressure, water temperature, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what the car looked like in raw. Now you start seeing formation by Jimmy Kilroy coming in around, and how the clips go on and luminas form. Look at how rough the aluminum is from Scaglietti. You know what a paint gauge is for judging how thick the paint is on a car? Well, if they put a lot of Bondo on there, you all of a sudden get a rating of 15 or 20 before you know it. That's very raw. Because of the sport, the racing cars were done with maybe one smoothing out layer, a primer, and one coat of paint. That's all in the old days. Here's aluminum being formed up over at Jimmy Kilroy's shop, across the alleyway behind the Mole shop. Here's again the corner showing it. Look at the repair work that had already been done above that headlight. Not well done, but it had been done. And the bucket for the headlight for formation. Here's the windshield formation going on, the old one and the new one behind it. This is where the windshield was attached. All those holes are where the Perplex is fitted around. You'll see it there. Here's the car, again, coming to shape over in Kilroy's shop, across the way. Now it's back in the Otis shop, completed body, and ready for reassembly and paint work and the like, on a dolly, roller dolly. Take a look closely at the work Jimmy Kilroy did on this thing. Look at the blending of aluminum pieces into making things right. Reformation of the bucket for the headlight to go into. The guy is a master. You know, there are not many people around like that. Pat told me that he was a sponsor when he came into the country. To gain admittance in the country, he had to have a special skill, and Pat convinced the authorities he did. He had quite a skill. Here's the car again, head on. You can see the headlight bucket's been restructured on the left side, the right side as you face it. And one headlight. These spotlight lights are put on for Sebring. A lot of things on this car are Sebring oriented. The light on the headrest, the back is a signal light. That was off a truck cab. They figured out, they just got a light, put it on as a signal light that he would throw on. He got a sign the lap before, come in next lap, he threw that light on instead of acknowledging, okay? Here again is another shot of the aluminum sectioning on the car, beautifully formed. More of the same. Now the bucket seats in there on the passenger side, coming together. Nice. David McCarthy is again another artist is putting together the bottom of the car. The engine's upside down. You can see the exhaust ports at the bottom there. The degree wheel off the back of the cam. He's putting the sump on, fastening the sump on. Here are those trays in the background with all the parts. They aren't mixed from one car to the other, they remain with the car. That's really originality at the bed. Some shops you never know what goes in so you never know what comes back out. Here's the engine back in the car, shot with a Perplex with a protector sheet on it to protect it from getting scratched. In the background with ropes over the fenders so we don't dent the aluminum. And here's that magnificent motor in their 4-cylinder monster motor. Here you get the shot of the 2 magnetos with the wires, 4 wires going into each of the plugs. There are 8 plugs on the 4-cylinder. We figure somewhere between 12% and 12%, maybe a little more, 10 to 12%, more efficient burn off of the fuel by having the extra plugs there. Okay. Here's the car on the ramp at Pebble Beach with Tazio and Bridget aboard. Bridget's waving at the other side at the spectators, right, Bridget? There's some photos of you, Bridget, from the other side. We'll have to get those for you, just of you. We don't know who the guy is behind the wheel, but you know who she is. Okay. Here's the car. This car won the M2 class at Pebble Beach against extremely stiff competition. Unbelievable. Well done. Well done. The Otis shop put together an all-star team to create this and get it down exactly as it raced in 1955 with Phil Hill. 2D was his race number. Okay? So that ends this portion. Any questions from the audience? Any questions? If not, let's gather around the car and we'll have Pat and Otis and his son Tazio talk about the experience with the car. I've given them a little script to work from, and that's the end of the show. It's a magnificent car. Whenever you take a photo of a car, get down low and show light underneath the car.